Hello and welcome back to Beyond the Veil Background Information. We're doing a character profile. Once again, it's a Viper Clan member, but it's about Thibaut. I literally assumed I'd already done a recording of Thibaut because he's such a prominent character in like every Viper Clan story, so I apologise I haven't done him before now. But as always, with character profiles, you'll get a little quote about them from one of the stories they're in or mentioned in. Then I'll give you some information on how I was inspired to make that character, and then I'll give you the profile. Now, Thibaut, because he's a main member of the Viper Clan, he has a more fuller profile available on my Patreon. So let's get into this because this might be a long one. Thibaut Viper. The whole situation should be simple to resolve. Thibaut apologizes and accepts there will be a trial over the fact he killed Athanasius' son, and within it, he admits that Enrico was buying illicits from the owl in the first place. What is he so worried about when it's only going to make the Principessa air some dirty laundry? Quote from the Viper King. I had assumed I'd done Tybalt's profile as a real thing before, but it seems I did not. Boy, is he such a problematic but fun character to play with. Now, I didn't want him to be viewed as an evil disabled character because of the nerve damage he has, because Thibaut isn't really evil at all. For the family, he can and will be their most fearsome protector, but he is being ruled over by the perception of the household. He's been influenced more by Talism, with his need to be strong and not for the family to be ridiculed, but it's often meant the majority of his ire has fallen upon those in this family who don't try to be seen as normal. For a while this was Elaine and her flagrant disregard for the expectations upon women, but he backed off when times changed. Theodosius has constantly been the source of great tension, mainly because Thibaut sees his brother as the reason they lost their father, at risk of severe danger because he and Valentina are a couple, and because Theodosius is as outspoken as he can be, and thus an embarrassment. Although some often speak of Tibble as homophobic for his attitude to his brother, it seems the situation is related only to the Pipistrello family and the fact that Theodosius made it public. He is seen to relax on such issues as he grows up, and even shows understanding for many others with their different needs. He is actually very eager to assist Theodotus later on in becoming a drag queen and understanding over transgender and non binary matters, which would otherwise seem counter to his personality and projected image. He's very powerful, and his approval is hard to achieve, but means a lot when given. When I made Tibble, I knew I needed one to be like a Vilmore. I needed one that could slip into insanity easily because of their own personal tics, and Thibaut has become the control freak of the family, and often the villain, even when he's not intending to be. But I like making him do things with that notion of with the best intentions. And the older he gets, the looser his questions on his actions become, to the point he will do something truly horrendous, but blame two others completely for it, even though it is the vilest thing he's ever done. Problem is, Tybalt is not as brutal as some vampires, but where they like to take a backseat to their cruelty, Tybalt is the one inflicting it, making him so much worse when he's in that mindset. He does have good qualities because I needed him to be real, but the problem was he's very real, very much a manifestation of the worst parts of people dealing with trauma, stress, and the overwhelming desire to control everything. He's what people can always become, like that. He's what people can always become when they're like that. So when I write him in the stories, he can be fun to write, but it can be very hard to like him. I do like him for all the good he does and for his relationship with Jacinth, but even his family suffer from him. And the last rattle is the story where we first see how his need for control and his own ego throws everyone into something they are not equipped to deal with. Plus, when dealing with Tybalt, he is very much initially a product of the time, so, early 1900s. Although he does develop and change with time, anything that's related to things that have happened to him and how he perceives he should respond to them tend to be of that time. So he can let others grow up and change, and he can change his things for them, but like It's always hard to explain. It's like when something bad happens to you and you don't get the initial response that you need, which is compassion. Instead, you get questioning or shame, and then you bury that deep down inside. You never deal with the triggers and you never deal with the actual emotional impact, so you become stunted in how you deal with things. And anything similar can be a trigger, and your behavior can become different because you're seeing that thing rather than the reality. And it's not just something with post traumatic stress disorder, it's something that happens with a lot of various mental health issues. And with Thibaut, it sort of felt like, or Thibaut, however you want to pronounce his name, it sort of felt like when I was creating him, this seemed to be what he was embodying, like the neglected that need compassion, because everything he does is very much like the extremes, like done because he's hurting, not because of other people hurting. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I'll just give you his profile now. So name Thibaut Viper, position head of the Viper clan, story featured in all Viper clan stories just about. Role varies from protagonist to antagonist in some. Gender male. Description: the brilliant golden eyes of his uncle, dirty blonde hair that is not only unruly but curiously much thicker than his father's. His skin is very lightly tan, not pasty like his siblings, by having colour, and he has the lightning strike eyebrows, the sign of a viper male in generations to come. And they're actually a dark brown shade like the roots of his hair are. He has the sharpest face, the harshest expression, and a little pair of moles on his left ear that apparently his grandfather, Sir Knightsbridge, had, although he likes to keep them covered rather than let anyone know of his human links. He is tall at 5'10", and he is very light in weight at only 12 stone, considering like his siblings, is muscular, although his muscles are not prominent on his arms and chest as much as they are his stomach and legs. I'll make a note that vampires are quite light in build because otherwise they couldn't fly as bats, so they don't tend to get to despite their size, they don't tend to get to very high weights. He is considered very handsome, very mature looking, with his resonating voice and dominant aura. He has many women falling for him, but he does not care about them. He has a rather prominent backside, just like his father and some of his brothers, and this has often caused him great irritation, as this is used to be a point of teasing by Enrico. But because he always wears dark colours, sits in dark places, and barely does more than turn his head slightly to acknowledge anyone, there is a permanent dark aura about him that seems to make every aspect of his physicality seem sharper and more ominous. Very vampire-like. Realm the Veil. Abilities. Thibaut is the most cunning, intelligent, and cautious kind of count going. He is often referred to as Maleficus because he is just so clever and dangerous that no one has ever gotten the better of him. He knew the crowds to hang around, he knew how to cover his mistakes, and he knew how to twist situations to work for him. Thibaut is actually incredibly strong too, despite his nerve damage, and he has always kept his true strength limited from those that could see it, and just his vicious stare and stern aura is enough to make people drop back and grimace. Master himself, he's agnostic. Personality: cold, harsh, calculating, supremely intelligent, arrogant, devoted to his family, protective, persuasive, dangerous, suspicious, vigilant, and always assuming that others will try to claim themselves his equal when they are not. Thibaut is never pleasant. He is antisocial, steps into society and demands respect, as well as obedience and cleanliness from everyone of his family present, as well as from his friends and others, and he gives the aura of authority even when he's trying not to be authoritative. His siblings tend to refer to him as a bit of a dictator. His uncle Taliesin says he creepily reminds him of the previous Count Vilmore, and Talia, though, understands that Thibaut gets his distrust of others, his preferences for observation, and studying, as well as his lack of interest in the opposing gender from her. Thibaut is in fact asexual, although it is not until he is well over 100 that these terms exist and can be matched to him. He has no interest in sex or reading and kissing, save for the fact he knows he will have to perform it at some point to produce an heir of his own. He is dutiful and respectful of those above him in rank, and can be curiously charming when he needs to be, always judging a situation and a meeting with what is expected of him, and this only adds to the cunning about them. He is very much an epitome of a vampire lord, and is so very patient in all things that sometimes he is referred to as a waiting spider. He cannot abide silly things, cannot abide his sisters not obeying the laws, and yet he has utter respect and belief in equality within the genders, although he is rather more fond of elitism than his father would like. But there is a warm side to his personality as well. He just hates showing it, and generally it's in regards to his family. And well, though everyone believes he bullies Jacinthe terribly, Thibaut is very aware that her delicate nature could make her a target to unpleasant men, and so he is determined he will make her as fine a lady as any other, though no one seems to realise that he only bullies her as he does because he cares. Relations: grandson of Count Taliesin Vilmore, nephew of Count Taliesin Vilmore II, son of Theo and Adelia Viper, elder brother of Gaston, Noel, Elaine, Theodosius, Celine, Odette, Beauregard, and Theodora Viper, godson of Francis Ryder, husband of Jacinthe Volturi, father of Césaire, Aislinn, and Remy Viper. I think this is all the stuff I wrote before. History: born eldest son with the middle name Francis in honour of his father's adopted brother, Francis Ryder, Thibaut has always been intelligent but cold in nature. As much as he loves and adores his family, which he does indeed, he never seems to care much for friends or for other people, and he is not above killing. His uncle Taliesin had mentioned before that he was remarkably similar to the previous Count Vilmore. Thibaut was best friends with the next heir of the Pipistrello, Enrico Pipistrello, the elder brother of Valentina, and they were good friends until an incident when Enrico violently attacked Thibaut. Enrico then encouraged his companions to attack and together they had hurt Thibaut so much that no matter the blood he consumed, he was constantly disabled by damaged nerves in his hip and leg, meaning he has to walk with a cane at times and cannot sit down comfortably. And it also hampers a lot of activity, including his digestion, so he only eats liquidized food as much as possible. Thibaut and Enrico, though, seemed to make friends again, because Enrico insisted it had been the cause of using vampire opium sold to him by some Strix on the edge of the campus. But when Thibaut and Enrico are walking on their own and meet this figure, and Enrico buys from him again, and Thibaut immediately chooses to get away from him and limps off and hurries off. Enrico hurried after him, trying to apologise, and a conversation occurred that only Thibaut knows the facts of, and for it he lost his temper at last and attacked Enrico. In fact, Thibaut ripped Enrico to little pieces and was in such a fury, obsessed with hearing a squealing scream he'd remembered from his attack that seemed to cause his sadistic streak. He also ripped the Strix up too. But when found and bloodied by the Strix, it was assumed by Enrico's companions that the Strix had killed Enrico, and Thibaut had avenged them, and was clearly wounded. It became a curious kind of rumour that Thibaut had gained the awe and unquestionable alliance of the Pipistrello's younger members for avenging his best friend's death. But Thibaut never tells anyone what happened, and will only ever tell one person in his life the entire story. Thibaut is being trained to take his father's place, and should anything happen, and his abilities to make friends amongst the nobles, his harsh manner that means negotiating with him always seems to be in his favour, and he is already considered a rising star and danger within the vampire world. But all the same, what happened with Enrico had left a dark air around Thibaut, and he both believes that the Principessa wished he'd have died in Enrico's place. And he believes that the Principessa wished that he'd have died in Enrico's place. He also never talks of Enrico anymore, as if he'd never existed, and though his family are not all aware of the attack, only Thibaut and those present who have seen it knew the full horror of this incident. Thibaut is also looking to marry one of the three daughters of Count Philippe Volturi to strengthen the ties between the Viper clan and the Volturi clan. Philippe is seriously eager for this and seems to show Thibaut more affection than his own sons. Final comment. There's so much to unpack with Thibaut, and he's one of my favourite awful characters in my stories, so he can be a lot to handle and discuss, but hopefully you found him interesting. And yes, if you want to know, the history was written on my Patreon bit, and it was written when I just before I published Foundations of Blood, so it's out of date, but at the same time still good. So I hope you found that interesting. Thank you.